for calmly leaving when my mother-in-law kicked me out, leaving my husband speechless? My name is Hannah, and this morning my mother-in-law Barbara kicked me out of the little 650-square-foot house she bought in the small mountain town of Pine Hollow. 650 square feet is nothing, but it was her territory, her little kingdom, and I was no longer welcome. I do not want to see you under my roof for another minute, she said with that thin mouth and those eyes that always sized me up and found me lacking. She gave no further explanations. She never does. Just the order, clear and cold. And I, like a fool, like a submissive woman, said nothing. I nodded, grabbed my purse. Luckily I had never fully unpacked my suitcase when I came, and I left. The old wooden door closed behind me with a dry thud that echoed in the empty street. There was no crying, no tantrum, just a huge emptiness in my chest, and the sound of my own footsteps on the pavement. I got into my reliable sedan, one of the few things in my name, and drove aimlessly for a while, leaving behind the gray mountains of Pine Hollow toward San Diego, toward what theoretically was still my home in the city, although Jason, my husband, had been spending more time in Los Angeles for months because of an important project. Even then it was starting to smell like a lie to me, but you choose to believe what is convenient. I had not reached the highway when the phone rang. Jason's profile picture, smiling on the beach an eternity ago, lit up the screen. I put it on speaker. "Hannah, where are you?" His voice, harsh, full of a fury that was not just from the moment but accumulated, pierced the windshield. "On the road heading back to San Diego. I just talked to my mother. She told me that you left her alone there. What were you thinking? What have you done?" He was yelling. He always yelled when he was in Los Angeles, as if the distance gave him permission to turn the volume up to the max. I took a deep breath. The emptiness in my chest began to fill with something new. It was not anger yet. It was a strange glacial calm. The calm that comes when something breaks forever. "I have not done anything, Jason. Barbara literally told me to leave her house and I left. Her house is the family house, and you just take off like it is nothing. What are the people in the town supposed to think? You are selfish." There it was, the same old song, what people think, what should be, the yelling, the accusations, years of it, years of gritting my teeth, of giving in, of trying to be the wife and daughter-in-law they expected. And for what? To be thrown out on the street with a purse and a couple of changes of clothes. The calm inside me solidified. The words came out before I could think twice about them, clear and calm, almost alien to me. "Jason, stop talking right now. Stop right now." The silence on the other end was total, broken only by his heavy breathing. He was not used to me talking to him like that. I had never done it. "What?" "I told you to stop. And now listen, because I am only going to say this once." I paused, watching the white line on the road glide under the car. "I have called my lawyer, Jennifer Hayes. You remember her, right? The one who helped us with the lease for the first apartment." "Lawyer? What are you talking about, Hannah? Have you gone crazy?" His tone had dropped, but it was the tone of someone talking to a dangerous and unstable person. "I am talking about divorce, Jason. I want a divorce." A dry, incredulous laugh came through the speakers. "Divorce over this? Over a silly argument with my mother? You are hysterical. Hang up, take a cold shower, and we will talk tomorrow when you have come to your senses." "It is not over the argument, Jason." My voice did not tremble. It sounded flat, definitive. "It is over everything, over the years, over the yelling, over the lies, over your eternal trips to Los Angeles, and also since we are talking about your mother's little house." I dropped the calculated pause. "Over that 650-square-foot house in Pine Hollow that you paid for with the money from the joint account, from our joint account, Jason, the one we use for savings. The savings that theoretically were to expand our apartment. Or do you not remember anymore?" The silence was absolute again. There was no breathing, there was nothing. It was the silence of an animal that has just been discovered in its lair. "What? What are you saying?" he whispered weakly. "I am saying that I have the bank statements, the ones from the last 3 years. The transfers, the loans to your mother that were never paid back, the cash withdrawals before your trips to Los Angeles, everything. Jason, I went to the bank this morning after your mother kicked me out, and I asked for all the documentation. You are right, maybe I was a fool before, but I am not a fool anymore. Hannah, listen to me." His voice changed. The fury had disappeared, replaced by an urgent, sticky panic. That is not what you think. It is complicated. My mother needed a place and it was an investment. We can talk about this. There is no need to involve lawyers. Lawyers complicate everything. It is too late to talk, Jason. Too late for everything. I felt a huge weight, one I had been carrying since the day of our wedding, slip off my shoulders and shatter against the asphalt. Do not ever call me again. From now on, talk to my lawyer. She will send you the papers. Hannah, you cannot do this. It is our life, it is our money. That house belongs to my mother. The scream was of pure terror now. The terror of a man who sees his control slipping away. We will see what the judge says about that. Goodbye, Jason. I hung up. I disconnected the hands-free, and then only then, with my hands firmly on the steering wheel and my eyes fixed on the road opening up before me, I let the tears fall in silence. They were not tears of sadness. They were tears of relief. Of fear too, of course, but mostly of a tremendous relief, like the first gulp of air after almost drowning. I looked in the rearview mirror. The mountains of Pine Hollow were now just a bluish blur on the horizon. Back there remained the little 650-square-foot house, Barbara, and the submissive woman who had gone with her. Ahead lay only the road and a war that, for the first time, I had no intention of losing. The apartment in San Diego smelt stuffy and lonely. Despite technically being my home, every piece of furniture, every curtain reminded me of arguments or long hours of silence. I dropped my purse on the floor with a dull thud and leaned against the door. The adrenaline from the call with Jason was dissipating, giving way to trembling hands and the harsh reality. I had done it. I had burned the only bridge that kept me tied to a life that, although miserable, was familiar. The doorbell rang sharply, making me bring my hand to my chest. I was not expecting anyone. Through the peephole I saw the worried face of Stephanie, my friend from college. Her black hair was tied up haphazardly, and she carried a brown folder under her arm. I opened the door. "My God, Hannah, when you hung up on me, I came as soon as I could," she said, coming in and wrapping me in a hug that smelled of familiar perfume. It was that familiar, non-judgmental hug that finally broke something inside me. A dry sob shook my shoulders. Come on, it is okay. The worst is over," she murmured, guiding me toward the sofa. When I managed to calm down with a cup of tea in my hands, Stephanie placed the folder on the coffee table. "I have been doing my own digging," she said seriously. "Ever since you told me that Jason was always tight on money, and that his mother suddenly bought a house in the town, I smelled a rat. Girl, I work in administration. I know how things are tracked. What have you found?" I asked, my voice still hoarse. "That your beloved mother-in-law, Barbara, has been taking advantage of her son like this for 3 years. And Jason, being the accomplice that he is, letting it happen." She opened the folder. There were bank statements, printouts of transfers, even photocopies of some checks. "Look, regular transfers from the joint account to an account in Barbara's name. Always amounts just below the limit that would require notifying the authorities. Then from Barbara's account the money travels. A part to the construction company in Pine Hollow for the little house. Another part, here is the good stuff, to an account in Oceanside." "Oceanside?" I repeated, confused. "Yes. In the name of a company. Pacific Coast Investments, LLC. I asked a friend to look in the business registry for companies belonging to your husband and your mother-in-law. And according to the property records," Stephanie handed over a page with a blurry screenshot. "He has a condo in his name. Right on the beachfront in Oceanside, bought 2 years ago." The air vanished from my lungs. While I was tightening my belt to save for a bigger mortgage, for a future that never arrived, they had a condo on the beach. While I endured Barbara's contempt in her tiny rural refuge, she had her little house and her coastal condo paid for with our money. "This feels like a deep betrayal," I whispered, rage boiling where before there was only desolation. "They have been misusing the funds." "Worse than that, Hannah. They are your family. Trust is what they stole first." Stephanie squeezed my hand. "But now you have this. It is proof of the misuse because this is a serious situation. Even if you were married in the church." I started organizing the papers, my hands now steady. Ours, Stephanie's, everything. I needed to see it, touch it, believe it. I was so immersed in creating piles of betrayal on the glass table that we did not hear the key in the lock. The door flew open. Jason stood in the doorway with a travel suitcase and a wrinkled jacket. He must have caught the first flight out of Los Angeles. His face was congested, his eyes bloodshot. He looked at me, at Stephanie, and at the papers scattered across the table. "What is this?" he roared, dropping the suitcase with a crash. "A party? Are you celebrating my ruin?" Stephanie jumped to her feet. "You have no right to barge in like this, Jason. Hannah told you to talk to her lawyer." "This is my house too," he said, taking a step forward. The smell of travel sweat preceded him. "Get out of here," I said, standing up. My voice did not tremble. I looked him in the eyes, something I had not dared to do for years. "Or I am calling the police right now." He laughed, an ugly, forced sound. "Call the police for entering my own house? Come on, Hannah. Enough nonsense. I came to fix this like adults." His gaze drifted to the papers. He recognized the formats of the bank statements. His expression changed. The fury gave way to a blind panic. "What is that? What are you doing with my things?" "They are our things, Jason. And they are proof." I picked up the paper for the company in Oceanside and handed it to him. Pacific Coast Investments. Sounds great for an investment. The beach condo has nice views. He turned pale. Suddenly, all his bravado deflated. That is not what you think. It is an investment for the future. For both of us. It was going to be a surprise. Surprise indeed, Stephanie said. "You have been misusing the funds for years. You stay out of this. This is between my wife and me." Jason turned toward me, pleading now. "Hannah, for the love of God. This has gotten out of hand, but we can fix it. Destroy those papers. Forget about the divorce. We will both go to Oceanside. We will start over. Mom does not have to know anything." It was the same old song. Lies. More lies and the empty promise of a better future that never arrived. I looked at the papers, I looked at his panicked face, and I knew there was no turning back. "No, Jason, there is no us. Everything has been said. Now get out." Something broke in him. The plea turned into pure rage. "So there is no turning back, huh? You think you are so smart with your papers and your friend." With a sweep of his hand, he cleared the entire table. The papers flew through the air. The teacup smashed against the wall, leaving a brown stain. "Jason!" I yelled, but he did not stop. His eyes locked onto my cell phone, which was charging at the end of the table. He grabbed it. This is what you used to conspire against me, to destroy my life." "Leave it," I lunged, but it was too late. He raised it above his head and smashed it against the tile floor. The shattering of glass was deafening. He stood there panting, looking at the remains of the phone as if he himself could not believe what he had done. Then he looked at me. In his eyes there was no longer anger, just a terrifying emptiness. Stephanie already had her phone in her hand. "I have called the police. They are on their way. Are you leaving right now? Or should I also tell them about the transfers?" Jason looked at Stephanie's phone, looked at me, looked at the pieces of mine on the floor. Without a word, he turned around, grabbed his suitcase and walked out, slamming the door shut so hard the frames shook. I slid down to the floor, among the scattered papers and broken glass. I picked up the remains of my phone. It was just an object, but at that moment it symbolized everything he could do to me, everything he had destroyed. Stephanie knelt beside me and hugged me. "It is over, Hannah," she murmured. "Now it is really over." I looked at the broken glass in my palm. I was no longer trembling. I just felt an intense cold and a steel determination. He had broken a phone, but I had the copies of the papers, and I had broken something much more important, the last thread of fear that tied me to him. "You are right, Stephanie," I said, dropping the fragments. "It is over. And now the real challenge begins." The shards of glass from the phone were still scattered on the floor as a cruel reminder when, the next morning, I knocked on the door of David Reynolds's office. He was not one of those lawyers from big downtown firms, but a neighborhood man, the kind who solves community disputes, inheritances, and evictions. Stephanie recommended him to me. He is thorough and not afraid to face difficult situations. He knows all the tricks. David welcomed me with a tired smile and offered me a coffee. He was a man in his 50s with thick-rimmed glasses and a button-down shirt. His office smelled of old paper. I told him everything from the beginning. About Barbara, the little house, the transfers, the company in Oceanside, Jason's visit, the broken phone. I showed him the papers that Stephanie and I had managed to save, now organized in a new folder. He listened in silence, nodding occasionally. When I finished, he took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Hannah, first of all about the phone. That is property damage. And with Stephanie's statement and the police report you filed last night, we have something. It is a start, but it is the least of our worries. The least of our worries? I asked, surprised. Yes, because the core of everything, your mother-in-law's house, is a much bigger problem. He picked up the bank statements. Look, these transfers from the joint account to Barbara are clear. Diverting money from the marital assets to a third party, your mother-in-law, without your consent. That, in principle, is a misuse of community funds. We can claim reimbursement for half of those amounts. A thread of hope lit up inside me. So, can I get the money back for the house? David gave a slow, negative gesture. The money, a part of it, yes. The house, no. He pulled out a photocopy of a property registry extract he had requested online. The registered property in Pine Hollow is in the name of a single owner, Barbara Thompson. There is no co-ownership. It is legally hers in her own right. But it was paid for with our money, I insisted, feeling the ground shifting beneath me. And you will be able to claim from Barbara the money your husband put in, which is also yours. It is a debt she owes to the marital estate. But the house as real estate is hers. Unless you can prove that there was a prior agreement, a private contract establishing that the money was a loan for a joint purchase. Is there one? No, I muttered, defeated. Nothing. Everything was kept in the family. By word of mouth. Words do not hold up well in court, David said with an almost lamenting tone. Barbara is smart, or she had a smart advisor. Putting the house only in her name cuts off any direct property claim on your part right at the root. Your husband, Jason, could claim his share from his mother if he proves the money was his, but that would be a lawsuit between them. And you are only entitled to, at most, half of what he might recover. It is a complicated process. The bitter anger returned. Are you saying they misused the funds and I cannot do anything? I did not say that. You can claim the money. It is a slow process. Plus, there is the company and the condo in Oceanside. That is another front. And then there is the divorce itself, spousal support, division of marital assets. He looked at me intently. Hannah, this is going to be a long process. Jason and your mother-in-law have deeper pockets, at least with the money they have been taking from you. You have to be prepared. I left David's office with my head spinning. The law, with its cold logic, proved me right and took it away from me at the same time. I could fight for the assets while they kept much of the benefit. The air in San Diego, crisp despite the sun, failed to clear my thoughts. Stephanie was waiting for me at a cafe in the square. So what does the lawyer say? She asked, sliding a coffee toward me. I summarized everything in a flat voice. It is like they have built a wall around me. I am right, but being right is not enough. Stephanie did not seem discouraged. She shook her head with a strange smile, almost of triumph. Walls have windows, Hannah. And sometimes those windows are people. She lowered her voice. Look, the money and the house are a problem, yes. But a judge in a divorce does not just look at numbers. He looks at conduct. An inappropriate relationship, you know what unbalances the scale more than bank transfers? A clear pattern of behavior. I do not follow you. Jason. His trips to Los Angeles. Stephanie leaned over the table. My cousin works at a travel agency. Jason has not bought a ticket to Los Angeles in the last 8 months. The trips he has made are to Oceanside. Round trips, sometimes on the same day. My heart skipped a beat. Oceanside. The company's condo. I thought it would be a hotel situation, Stephanie continued. But it is more useful for us. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo taken from afar of a young woman coming out of a clothing store on a commercial street. Her name is Ashley. She works at Elegance Boutique on the main street. She is in her early 20s. And according to the girl at the hair salon next door, who is my brother's friend, a man from San Diego visits her often. A man named Jason. I looked at the photo. The woman was young, pretty thin. She was wearing a dress that I never would have dared to put on. I did not feel pain or jealousy, just a deep disgust and a spark of cold resolve. Everything fit. The trips, the disappearing money, his constant irritation, his contempt. It was not just his mother. It was this. What do you want me to do? I asked, looking at Stephanie. I want you to go see her today. Now. I am not going to make a scene, I said, although something inside me burned to do just that. It is not about the scene. It is about the proof, Stephanie said, pulling a small digital device out of her purse. It was a small black voice recorder. David told you that words are worthless, but recorded words spoken in a moment of surprise in front of witnesses, that is a different story. Not to prosecute anything directly, but to prove his disloyalty, his bad faith for the judge. And for the public record, if necessary. The idea turned my stomach, but the determination in Stephanie's eyes was contagious. I nodded. Let us go. Elegance Boutique was a small but elegant store with very thin mannequins showing off expensive dresses. A little bell rang when we opened the door. Inside, it smelled of perfume and new fabric. There was only one customer looking at blouses, and behind the counter the woman from the photo. Ashley was taller than she appeared, and her salesperson's smile froze for a moment when she saw me walk in, followed by Stephanie. Maybe my face had appeared in some wedding photo Jason did not bother to hide, or maybe my expression said it all. Good afternoon. I will be right with you, she said, recovering her composure a little too quickly. Stephanie addressed the other customer. Excuse me, could you leave us alone for a moment? It is an urgent family matter. The woman, surprised, nodded and almost ran out of the store. Ashley turned pale. What is this? If you are not going to buy anything, I will have to ask you to. You are Ashley, I stated. My voice sounded strangely calm. The recorder in my coat pocket was on. Stephanie had checked it before entering. Yes. And you are involved in an inappropriate relationship with my husband, Jason Thompson. It was not a question. She gripped the edge of the counter. I do not know what you are talking about. I do not know any. Save it. I cut her off. I did not raise my voice. I spoke clearly, slowly, so the recorder would capture every word. Jason Thompson from San Diego married. He travels to Oceanside often, but says he goes to Los Angeles. He has a condo here in Oceanside under the name of Pacific Coast Investments. And he comes to see you here or he takes you there. How long have you two been together? A year. 2. Her mask of innocence cracked, replaced by fear and a sudden fury. And what does it matter to you? If he is with me, it is because things are not working at home. You and your mother-in-law have made things difficult. He has told me everything. Good, I thought. Keep talking. Of course he has told you everything. Surely he has also told you that the money you use to go on trips and pay for your expenses is ours. From our marriage. That is nonsense. Jason has his own money, she said, but her voice was less firm. His money. His money is in my mother-in-law's account or in the beach condo he bought secretly. He is supporting you with our money, Ashley. The words had an effect. Her eyes flashed with anger. Get out of here or I am calling the police. Call them. Let us see what you tell them. That the wife of the man you are involved with came to pay you a visit? They will love the story. Stephanie, who had been watching from the door, added. And the owners of the store too. They are going to love having this situation affect their business. It gives a very bad image. Ashley looked from one to the other, cornered. She was no longer the self-assured person, but a scared young woman whose situation was in jeopardy. He cares about me, she said, but it sounded weak. He cares about himself, I snapped. And when it suits him, he will leave you stranded just like he is trying to leave me without support. Because in the end, his mother always keeps the money. I turned around to leave. I had gotten what I wanted. Her implicit confirmation, her reaction, her fear. It was going to be useful proof for David. Wait, Ashley said with a threat of a voice. When I turned around, I saw there were tears of frustration in her eyes. What do you want? I do not want anything from you, I said. And it was the truth. Just so you know who you are involved with. And if you have any decency, walk away from this situation before it affects you too. We stepped out onto the street. The afternoon sun hit me right in the face. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. In my pocket, the recorder had captured the truth, difficult and painful. It was not the house, but it was a tool. A good one. Stephanie put her arm around my shoulders. Well done. You stood up to her. Now they know that you not only have papers, you also have strength. I smiled for the first time in days. It was a tired smile, but a real one. It is not over, I said. Of course not, Stephanie replied with a fierce smile. Now that they know you can push back is when we have to be most careful. But at least now they know you are not alone. And it was true. I was not. I had Stephanie, I had David, I had a recorder full of truths, and I finally had the will to use all of it. The long process, as David called it, had just begun, but I had already faced my first battle and I had won it. The recording was a powerful tool in my pocket. Its weight, digital and intangible, gave me a cold security. David, the lawyer, had smiled with a professional gesture upon hearing it. It is good. It shows his bad faith, his intention to hide. A judge will see it. But do not get overconfident, Hannah. Battles are not only won in the courts. I did not fully understand his warning until Sunday morning. My phone, an old model I had bought in an emergency, vibrated with a call from an unknown number. It was the deep voice, full of false pity, of Father Patrick Riley, the parish priest of St. Michael's Church in Pine Hollow, where Jason and I had gotten married. My child Hannah, it saddens me so much to have to call you about this. Rumors, very difficult things reaching the ears of the parish. Your mother-in-law, poor Barbara, is devastated. She believes her family is falling apart. And today in her pain, she has asked to speak during the reflection after communion, to ask for prayers for her son, for your marriage. I felt a chill. And what are you telling me, Father Patrick? That it would be a gesture of goodwill, of charity, for you to be present. To show that despite everything, the family remains united before God. To silence the gossip. His tone was sweet as honey, but the implication was clear. If I did not go, I would be the one who destroys a family and despises the church. The 12 o'clock Mass. I hope to see you. He hung up. It was not an invitation. It was a trap. Barbara wanted the public stage, the moral pulpit of the church, to discredit me before the whole town, to win the battle of public opinion before the legal battle even began. Stephanie was furious when I told her. Do not go. It is an ambush. What is she going to do, confront you inside there? Worse, I said, looking at the small recorder that I now always carried with me. She is going to try to discredit me, turn me into the problem. If I do not go, I prove her right. She will say I do not even have the courage to show up before God. So, are you going to go let them pressure you in public? No. A cold smile formed on my lips. The steel determination that had been born on the road back to San Diego hardened even more. I am going to go stand my ground. And I am going with my own response. The town of Pine Hollow smelled of barbecue and fresh air, as always. The small square in front of the church was full of respectable-looking people, the men in jackets, the women in their Sunday best. Eyes locked onto me as I got out of the car. Whispers slithered through the still air. There is Hannah. Poor Barbara. They say she wants to take even the house. I squeezed the recorder in my coat pocket and walked in. The incense hit me in the face. The church was full. Barbara was in the front row in strict mourning, a black scarf on her head. Seeing me, she turned slowly. Her eyes, dry and hard as stones, pierced through me. There was no pain in them, only triumph. Jason was not there, of course. I sat in the back alone. I felt the stares on the back of my neck throughout the entire Mass. Father Patrick preached about family, about the patience of a person of faith, about honoring one's parents. His words, though generic, sounded like an accusation directed at me. Communion arrived, then the parish announcements, and then Father Patrick, with an expression of infinite sorrow, took the microphone again. Brothers and sisters, before the final blessing, one of our sisters, Barbara, mother of a son of this parish, afflicted by the challenges the Lord has allowed her to carry over her family, wishes to ask for our prayers. Barbara stood up, visibly moved and trembling, and approached the altar. She took the microphone Father Patrick handed her. Her voice, weak and broken at first, filled the church. Brothers, dear neighbors, friends, I apologize for taking your time, but my heart is so heavy. She made a theatrical pause, wiping a non-existent tear. I pray for my son, a good man, a hard-working man, who is being affected by resentment and ingratitude. I pray for my daughter-in-law, whom I loved like a daughter, and who has chosen the path of conflict and claims, wanting to leave my son in difficulty and take away the humble roof where I hope to spend my final days. A murmur of shock and disapproval rippled through the pews. Heads turned toward me. I remained motionless, my hand in my pocket, my finger on the record button of my small device. She has sown discord in my family, Barbara continued, gaining strength. She has caused pain with her attitude, and now with claims and lawyers she wants to destroy us. I ask for your prayers for her, so that she may find clarity, and for me, so that I may have the strength to move forward. She finished, bringing the handkerchief to her eyes. Father Patrick approached her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. Amen, brothers and sisters. Let us pray for this family in need. That was my moment. I stood up. The creak of the wooden pew sounded like a gunshot in the expectant silence. 100 heads turned in unison. I also want to speak, Father Patrick. My clear, firm voice echoed under the vaults. I did not use the microphone. I did not need it. I want to speak for the truth to come to light. And for that, sometimes it needs a little help. Barbara looked at me, and for the first time I saw a shadow of doubt in her eyes. Father Patrick frowned. My child, this is not the time or the place. I think it is the perfect place, I interrupted him. I took the recorder out of my pocket and raised my arm so everyone could see it. Because right here, in front of everyone and in front of God, Barbara has spoken of resentment. I have brought a truth. I pressed the play button. Ashley's voice, high-pitched and full of contempt, came out of the tiny speaker, crystal clear in the absolute silence of the church. And what does it matter to you? If he is with me, it is because things are not working at home. You and your mother-in-law have made things difficult. He has told me everything. And then my calm voice. He is supporting you with our money, Ashley. The effect was electric. A collective gasp swept through the nave. Perplexed faces turned toward Barbara, whose mask of pain had turned into a grimace of pure horror. Father Patrick was livid. It is a lie. It is a setup, Barbara screamed, pointing at me with a trembling finger. That woman is trying to destroy my son. A setup? I asked, raising my voice. The voice of the woman with whom Jason, your son, the good man, spends his time in Oceanside while he tells me he is in Los Angeles? The same woman he supports with the money from our marriage? The same money that you, Barbara, used to buy your house? Is that also a setup? Chaos erupted. People were talking, standing up. Some ran out, others moved closer to hear better. Father Patrick, his face contorted, moved toward me. Give me that. This place is a house of God, not a place for disputes. I pulled the recorder back. It is evidence for my lawyer, Father Patrick. Evidence of the double life and the double standards. He stopped, panting. He looked at me, and in his eyes there was panic and a deep personal concern. It was that look that gave me the clue. It was not just the panic of a shepherd seeing his flock fall apart. It was the panic of someone who had been involved. You do not know the damage you are doing, he sputtered, lowering his voice. But it was too late. I had seen it. Or maybe I do, Father Patrick? I whispered just for him. Do you know the damage caused by covering for this situation? His reaction was instantaneous. He backed away as if I had hit him. An intense blush crept up his neck. He said nothing, but his silence was more eloquent than 1,000 words. He looked at Barbara, who was watching the scene with wide eyes, and then looked back at me. There was fear in that look. This is not going to stay like this, he muttered, but his words sounded hollow, weak. I am sure it will not, I replied, putting the recorder away. I turned around and walked toward the door, making my way through the crowd of stunned parishioners. The murmuring behind my back was a rising river of discussion. Outside, the midday sun blinded me. I breathed the fresh air, clean, free of incense and tension. I had not won the war, not by a long shot, but I had just disrupted their favorite battlefield. Barbara could no longer play the card of the poor, pious victim. And Father Patrick had a secret, and I knew it. I smiled without joy, but with a deep satisfaction. The battle of the town was over, and for the first time I was not leaving defeated. The war continued, but the playing field was finally starting to level out. The discussion at the church spread like wildfire through the town. Stephanie bombarded me with messages with the most exaggerated rumors. That Father Patrick had to leave out the back door, that Barbara had been shaken. A lie I saw her standing when I left. That half the town now doubted her story. But rumors did not pay David. I needed something else, something tangible, and it was in Oceanside. The name of the company, Pacific Coast Investments LLC, danced in my head. David had told me that legally, since it was a company partially owned by Jason and therefore part of the marital assets, I could claim my share in the divorce. But we needed to know what was there. A condo according to the registry. But in what state? Rented out? Furnished? Was it Jason and Ashley's situation? Every question was difficult but also a potential advantage for me. You cannot go, Stephanie told me on the phone. It is risky. What if they see you? And who is going to go? You? Do you not know Jason? Do you not know how he senses danger when it gets close? I do. The calm I felt was strange, metallic. Besides, I have the key. The silence on the other end of the phone was eloquent. What key? The key from my mother's house. In San Diego. Jason has a copy, and Jason is a man of habit. He uses the same keychain for everything. It was a risk, a huge risk. But the morning after the church discussion, with Jason probably still dealing with the fallout or reacting with Barbara, I drove to my mother's house, who was out of town, and checked her spare keychain. There was a modern security key with a blue plastic keychain from a dealership in Oceanside. It was not definitive proof, but it was a chance. I took the drive to Oceanside. The address of the condo, obtained from the registry by David, was in a modern, white building right on the beachfront in Oceanside. It was not a palace, but it looked new, expensive. From the sidewalk across the street, wearing large sunglasses and a scarf over my head, I watched. It was a Tuesday morning, not many people around, and intercom with names. I did not see Pacific Coast Investments, but I did see several door numbers. The condo was 7D. I slipped in behind a family leaving, my heart in my throat. The elevator took me to the 7th floor. The hallway was quiet, carpeted. In front of door 7D I stopped. I pulled out the blue key. Fit. It turned. With a soft click the door opened. The smell was the first thing I noticed. Clean new lavender air freshener, and a faint trace of Jason's cologne. The condo was small. A studio with ocean views, impeccably decorated with neutral furniture. Everything was impersonal, like a stage set. There were no photos, few books, a few glasses on the counter of the open-plan kitchen. I checked the bathroom. 2 toothbrushes, one for a man, one pink. In the shower, women's shampoo and men's body wash. In the bedroom closet, some of Jason's shirts carefully hung, and next to them dresses, skirts, clothes younger and more daring than mine. The bed was made with a gray quilt. There was no anger, just a chill that spread from my stomach. This is where he came. This is where he pretended to have another life, a life paid for with our money, with our hard work. I took out my phone and started taking pictures of everything. The toothbrushes, the closet, the views, receipts from a nearby store in a drawer. Evidence. Documentation of the situation. I was photographing the tag of one of Jason's shirts, expensive ones from a store in Los Angeles, when he never had money to buy me anything, when I heard the sound. A click. The sound of the door being locked from the outside. My heart stopped. I had not heard anyone arrive in the hallway. I slipped over to the door and looked through the peephole. Nothing. A horrible premonition ran down my spine. There was no way out through the stairs without being seen. The only window was the living room, one that led to a small balcony. I ran toward it. Below, the beach, people looking like specks. On one side, the gap of the building. On the other, the neighbor's balcony, 1.5 meters away, separated by a 7-story drop. And then I heard the key in the lock again. He had locked it from the outside to trap me, and now he was coming in. I did not have time to think. I grabbed my purse with the phone inside and stepped out onto the balcony, closing the sliding glass door behind me just as I heard the front door open. I clung to the railing, vertigo making my head spin. The sea breeze whipped my face. The balcony door opened. Jason appeared in the frame. He did not look angry. He looked tired, pale, with huge dark circles under his eyes. But his eyes, when they saw me huddled in the corner of the balcony, flashed with something dangerous. "Hannah," he said in a strangely soft voice. "What a surprise. Do you like the condo? The views are nice, right? Get out of the way, Jason. Let me out." I tried to keep my voice from trembling. "Out? But you just got here. And you entered without permission. That is called trespassing." He leaned against the doorframe, blocking the only exit. "What are you looking for here? More evidence for your claims. I know it is your situation. Yours and..." I did not want to say her name. "Ashley," he smiled, a twisted gesture. "Yes, Ashley is nice. She does not make demands. She does not go investigating like this." Every word was difficult. "Paid for with our money," I said, glaring at him. "With my money," he corrected, and the softness vanished from his voice. "I work, I earn, you just spend. And now you want to take even this with your lawyers and your recordings. You embarrassed my mother in front of the whole town. Are you happy?" The fear was beginning to yield to resolve. "And I will do it again. And again, until the situation is addressed." His face contorted. He took a step out onto the balcony. I backed up until the railing hit my back. 7 stories of free fall were behind me. "Do you know what you are?" he said, his voice down to a thread. "A difficult situation. And difficult situations have to be handled." There was no further warning. He lunged toward me to snatch my purse, to take the phone. We struggled briefly in the confined space of the balcony. His fingers closed around the strap of the purse. I pulled back with all my might, and then a desperate idea occurred to me. I stopped struggling. I suddenly let go of the purse. He, with the momentum, stumbled backward toward the door. In that split second of imbalance, I climbed onto the railing. I did not lean over much, just enough so that someone looking from below could see me. I clung to the railing with one hand, letting the wind whip my hair, my body in an unstable, dangerous posture against the empty blue of the sky and the sea. "What are you doing?" Jason yelled, purse in hand, his eyes wide with real panic. "Get down from there right now. Do not come near me," I screamed, and my voice sounded shrill, loaded with a panic that suddenly was not fake anymore. The vertigo was real, the fall serious. "Or I will jump. I swear, I will yell to everyone that you forced this. You are completely overwhelmed." But he did not dare take a step. He looked back toward the inside of the condo, calculating. He could not afford a bigger scandal. A situation like this from his secret condo would be the end. I started to scream. Not words, just a long, torn scream of terror and desperation. A scream intended to attract attention. It worked. From a balcony lower down, someone yelled, "Hey! Up there! What is going on?" A woman poked her head out. Then, on another balcony, a man, Jason, pale as death, made a gesture of surrender with his hands. "Get down, Hannah, for the love of God, get down. We will talk. I will give you whatever you need." But I was not screaming for him anymore. I was screaming for the street, for the onlookers who were already stopping to look, pointing upward. I was screaming so someone would call the police. The minutes that followed were difficult. Hanging from the railing, holding on with all my strength while Jason pleaded with me and reacted in turns. Until finally I heard the siren, distant at first, then louder, then parking right below. Voices over a megaphone. The sound of the condo door being forced open. When 2 uniformed police officers stepped cautiously onto the balcony, followed by a Jason trying to explain himself loudly, I let myself drop from the railing, collapsing onto the concrete floor, truly sobbing, shaking from head to toe. "My husband," I sobbed, pointing at Jason with a trembling finger while the officers surrounded me. He wanted to harm me. He locked me in, he threatened me. Over the money, over the divorce. Jason's protests were drowned out by the officer's sharp orders. As they helped me inside, still trembling, I saw from the condo door a man with a camera shooting upward, toward the balcony and then toward the facade of the building. A passerby with a phone held high. News travels fast, and an incident on a beachfront balcony was undoubtedly news. The officers led me to a patrol car. As I walked past Jason, who was being questioned by another officer, he looked at me. In his eyes there was no longer anger or contempt, only an absolute horror, the realization that this time I had not just stood my ground. I had completely changed the situation with him inside it. From the back seat of the patrol car, as an officer offered me a blanket, I watched the building recede. I had not recovered the phone, but I had gotten something better. Witnesses, police, and maybe, just maybe, a journalist. The situation had escalated to a new level, public and serious. The days following the incident in Oceanside were a whirlwind of noise and silence. Noise in the local media. A coastal newspaper published a brief but direct note. Domestic incident on beachfront balcony. Wife reports serious threat. Full names were not released, but JT, a man from San Diego, and HT, his wife, were enough for those who knew the circle. The silence, on the other hand, belonged to Jason. Not a call, not a threat, nothing. It was a silence more terrifying than his previous reactions. It meant he was scared, or that he was planning something. David, my lawyer, rubbed his temples, looking tired as I sat in his office. He had a copy of the newspaper on the table. He has raised the stakes, Hannah, and by a lot. He locked me on the balcony, I said coldly. The police saw it. There is a report. I know. And it is good. A police report weighs more than 1,000 rumors. But you have also drawn the spotlight, and the spotlight gets hot. He turned his computer screen toward me. It was the website of Jason's company, a mid-sized engineering consultancy. The board of directors has called an extraordinary meeting regarding corporate image issues. It is not a good sign for him, but neither is it for you. A cornered situation is difficult. Before I could answer, my phone vibrated. A number from Pine Hollow. I did not recognize it. Yes. Hannah? This is Martha speaking. Martha Ellis, your mother-in-law's neighbor. The one from the house with the red geraniums. The voice was elderly, raspy from years, but firm. I remembered her. A widowed woman, always at her door, observing everything without saying a word. Yes, I remember you. How can I help you, Martha? It is the other way around, child. I can help you. She paused. I saw the newspaper and I was in the church. I have had the phone in my hand ever since, but it was not the right time. Now it is. Help me? Why? The distrust was automatic. Because Barbara Thompson is difficult, and I know her history. Her voice grew heavy with an ancient bitterness. Her husband, Jason's father, Frank. He did not go out of state like she says. He left. He ran away from her 30 years ago. And I was one of the last people to see him before he left. I gasped for air. What do you mean? I mean that Frank came to my house one night with visible injury and real fear. That Barbara did not just make his life miserable. She caused harm when she had one too many drinks when he crossed her. He was a quiet, weak man and she was difficult. He showed me a piece of paper, an emergency room medical report from a few years prior. Broken ribs. He had it hidden. He asked me that if anything happened to him I should tell someone. But nobody paid attention to the situation against the respectable lady from the church group. In the end, he left without saying a word. Barbara told the out-of-state story, and everyone believed it. But I kept one thing. What thing? I asked, my heart racing. The local newspaper from that week. There is a small news item in the incident section. Police intervention in neighborhood dispute. They do not use names, but it gives her address. And it talks about a woman who caused harm to her husband. My husband, God rest his soul, worked at the newspaper, and he saved a copy of the draft for me, the one that had the names. I have kept that paper in a cookie tin all these years. I thought I would never take it out, but seeing you in the church, hearing that recording, and now this balcony incident. Her voice cracked. It is not fair. She cannot keep winning. A wave of emotion so intense it almost bent me in half rushed through me. It was not joy. It was something deeper: vindication. I was not alone. I was not the only one who saw the pattern. It had been there dormant for decades. Martha, would you be willing to tell my lawyer this? To testify if necessary. That is what I called for, child. That is why I have kept the paper all this time, so that someone would address it. Come whenever you want. I am always here. I hung up and told David everything. His eyes, tired a moment before, now gleamed with the cold light of determination. This changes things, Hannah. It is not just your word against theirs anymore. It is a pattern, a history of difficult behavior. She is not the poor, vulnerable older woman. She has a record. This can completely affect her credibility. And by association, Jason's. He looked at me. But you have to be careful. If Barbara finds out that Martha has talked. He did not get to finish the sentence. That night, in the temporary apartment I rented in a quiet neighborhood, knocking woke me up. It was not on the door. It was on the window. A smash of glass. One. Another. Someone was throwing stones at the window facing the street. I jumped out of bed, my heart clenching. I approached the window, crawling on the floor, and peeked an eye out the corner. Down below in the paved alleyway, lit by the yellowish street lamp, was Jason. He was not yelling at first. He just held a bottle of whiskey in one hand, and with the other gathered stones from the ground of a nearby public area. His face was a mask of pure frustration. He threw another stone. Crash. Part of a wooden shutter splintered. Come out. Come out and look at what you are doing to my life. He roared, his voice thick and affected by alcohol. You have affected my job. I have been suspended without pay. All because of your claims. I grabbed the phone with trembling hands and dialed 911. As I gave my address to the operator, another stone hit the window, making the glass rattle. It did not break, but a spiderweb of cracks appeared. You have 1 hour. 1 hour to withdraw the police report, to say it was a misunderstanding. Or I swear I will not just damage the window. I will cause more trouble, he bellowed. He tried to climb the small iron fence that enclosed the tiny ground floor patio, but he was too affected and slipped, falling on his back onto the pavement with a grunt of pain. Lights turned on in other windows. Voices asked what was going on. Jason, lying on the ground, began to sob, an ugly, angry cry. It was mine. It was all mine, and you have taken it from me. The sirens arrived shortly after. This time there was no need for theatrics. The officers found Jason unable to stand, surrounded by stones, with the empty bottle next to him. They arrested him for property damage, making threats and disturbing the peace. As they took him to the patrol car, he looked at me. Beneath the state he was in and the frustration, there was something else, an absolute emptiness, that of a man who has lost control over everything, even over himself. The next day, when I went to the police station to confirm the charges, the officer who assisted me told me with a mix of professionalism and pity, "Ma'am, your husband has been released on bail, but he has been issued a restraining order. He cannot come near you or your residence. Take advantage of it." And he lowered his voice. "Seriously consider going somewhere safe for a few days." I stepped out onto the street, the restraining order in hand. A piece of paper that seemed fragile against the frustration I had seen in his eyes. But I was no longer afraid. I had resolve, and I had a new witness and an old piece of paper kept in a cookie tin that could be the key to everything. I looked toward the mountains, in the direction of Pine Hollow. There was Barbara, believing herself safe with her decades-old story, and there was Martha, waiting with her truth. The situation had escalated again. Now I was not just fighting for my present. I was fighting to address a difficult past. And for the first time I felt that the playing field was not just leveled. It was tilting in my favor. The courthouses in San Diego smell of tension and old wood, a scent that gets into your clothes. David walked beside me with his brown leather folder under his arm, reviewing tactical points in a murmur. The trial judge, William Carter, is serious. He does not like spectacles. We focus on the facts. Misuse of marital assets, hiding wealth through the company, the police report from Oceanside, the restraining order. We leave the emotional stuff to them. We deal with data. I nodded, my throat dry. I wore a dark, simple pantsuit. I wanted to look sober, credible. Across the hallway outside the courtroom door they stood. Jason in a suit that hung loose on him, his face gaunt, but his eyes injected with a feverish determination. Barbara beside him in strict mourning, her hands clasped over her purse, unbothered. Their lawyer, a young man with a sharp smile named Kevin Lawson, spoke to them in a low voice. Upon seeing me, Barbara raised her chin slightly. There was no open emotion in her gaze, only a glacial contempt, as if I were someone who needed to be addressed efficiently, without emotion. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined. Judge William Carter, a man with a gray mustache and dry manners, occupied the bench. The hearing commences. David presented our petition for dissolution of marriage with division of assets based on Jason's conduct, citing his inappropriate relationship, his actions, the Oceanside police report, the restraining order, and above all, the misuse of shared funds. He was methodical. Clear. He showed the bank statements, the deed to the house solely in Barbara's name, the data on the Pacific Coast Company and the condo in Oceanside. The judge took notes. Then it was Lawson's turn. Jason's lawyer stood up with a pitying smile. Your Honor, my client Jason Thompson admits to having been overwhelmed by his wife's conflicted attitude. An attitude that, far from being recent, has its roots in untreated challenges that my client, out of loyalty, has tried to hide to protect her. David went rigid beside me. Objection, Your Honor. This is unfounded and irrelevant. It is completely relevant, Your Honor, Lawson insisted calmly, because it explains the genesis of these claims. The plaintiff's focus on money, her jealousy, her need to disrupt my client's family, even with the scene on the balcony, which was nothing but a difficult situation on her part. He pulled a document from a folder. To support this, I submit into evidence a psychiatric expert report prepared at the defense's request by a doctor, who has evaluated the plaintiff through her public statements and conduct. Conclusion: high probability of personality challenges with paranoid traits, and a tendency to create narratives. The air was knocked out of my lungs. I felt the floor open up. David jumped to his feet. This is unfounded. That report is void. My client has not been evaluated. It is improper. The judge tapped his gavel lightly. Silence. Let him finish, counsel. Proceed, Mr. Lawson. Lawson placed the report on the judge's desk with a gesture of profound sorrow. My client has been affected, Your Honor. Affected by a situation that now, in her distress, wants to ruin him. The transfers to his mother were to help her in her later years with the tacit understanding of a wife who then seemed understanding. The company in Oceanside is a legitimate investment, and the plaintiff, in her distress, has gone so far as to influence vulnerable people to create her claims. He looked directly at David. She even has a witness prepared, an older woman from the town whom she has undoubtedly influenced with her claims. It was a difficult move. Dirty but calculated. They were not trying to deny the facts. They were framing them within my supposed challenges. If the judge took the bait, everything else, the statements, the recording, Martha, would be tainted as the product of distress. I saw the flash of triumph in Jason's eyes. Barbara maintained her mask of resigned pain. Judge William Carter leafed through the report impassively. Then he looked at David. Counsel, the accusation is serious. Do you have anything to object to beyond your initial protest? David took a deep breath. He had grown pale, but a cold flame burned in his eyes. Yes, Your Honor, I have something to object to. And for that, I request that the witness proposed by the plaintiff, Mrs. Martha Ellis, take the stand. A murmur ran through the room. Lawson rolled his eyes as if it were an absurd formality. The judge nodded. Bring in the witness. The back door opened. Martha entered, helped slightly by a bailiff. She wore her best plain dark dress and moved with a dignity that silenced the room. Passing by Barbara's bench, she did not look at her. She swore to tell the truth. Barbara, for the first time, had her eyes fixed on her, a tense line in her jaw. Martha, David began softly. You are a neighbor of the defendant, Mrs. Barbara Thompson in Pine Hollow, correct? Yes, sir. For over 40 years. And you knew her late husband, Frank Thompson, father of opposing counsel's client. I knew him. A good man, quiet. Do you remember how his departure occurred? Objection, Your Honor, Lawson interrupted. What is this? What relevance does a family history from 30 years ago have? It has every relevance, Your Honor, David said, addressing the judge, because it goes to the heart of the defendant's credibility and her trial strategy. The witness is not speaking from hearsay. She has documentary evidence. The judge looked at Martha, interested now. Answer, ma'am. Martha nodded. Frank did not go out of state. He left because of her. She pointed at Barbara with a slight nod of her head. The night before he left, he came to my house, injured, terrified. He showed me a paper from a doctor and told me that she caused harm to him, that she broke his ribs once, that he was afraid the next time would be worse. Lies. They are old, rotten lies. Barbara's voice erupted in the room, harsh, stripped of all her false temperance. She had stood up, trembling. Jason tried to grab her arm, but she shook him off. Ma'am, sit down and remain silent, or I will have you removed from the courtroom, the judge warned, tapping his gavel. Barbara dropped back onto the bench, panting, her eyes fixed on Martha with a pure, ancient frustration. David continued. Martha, do you have any proof of what you are saying? Yes, sir. With hands that barely trembled, Martha opened her purse and pulled out an old, yellowed manila envelope. From it, she extracted 2 sheets of paper. One was a photocopy of a local newspaper clipping from 3 decades ago. The other, a piece of paper with the letterhead of the same newspaper, handwritten. This is the news article that came out in the incident section. Without names. But this, she held up the handwritten paper, is the draft that was not published. My husband had it. He worked there. In this one they do put the names. Barbara and Frank Thompson. And it describes that the police intervention was due to her causing harm to him. David took the papers and handed them to the judge. Your Honor, we submit copies. The witness will keep the original. This demonstrates a history of difficult behavior by Mrs. Barbara, the same person who today, through her son, presents an improvised psychiatric report to try to discredit my client by labeling her as unreliable. It is the most cynical projection. They are the ones with the history to hide. The silence in the room was absolute. Judge William Carter examined the newspaper draft, then Jason's psychiatric report. His face, always expressionless, was a stone mask, but his fingers tapped lightly on the table. Lawson tried to recover. Your Honor, this is irrelevant. An unproven event from 30 years ago against an elderly woman cannot. And it must, counsel. The judge cut him off with a dry voice, because it goes directly to credibility. And in this case, the credibility of the parties and their evidence is everything. He looked at the psychiatric report with disdain. This expert report, prepared without direct evaluation of the plaintiff, based on statements and conduct, now takes on a very different shade. His gaze rested on Jason, then on Barbara, who had lowered her head, her breathing still agitated. And these documents provided by the witness. He held up the newspaper draft. I need to verify the authenticity of this paper, and I need to fully understand the implications. He looked at the clock. I suspend the hearing. It will resume in 15 days. In that time, I order the authorities to verify the origin of this document and to locate, if possible, any police or medical record from that time regarding that incident. And to the defense, he added, locking eyes with Lawson, I suggest you seriously reconsider the strategy of attacking the plaintiff's credibility with such means. He banged his gavel. Court is adjourned. The relief that flooded me was so intense it left me weak. David squeezed my arm, a fierce smile on his lips. You got him, Hannah. You got him. Across the room, Jason was pale, whispering loudly to Lawson, who was gathering his papers with a tense expression. Barbara did not move. She stood up slowly, heavily, as if her years suddenly weighed twice as much. As she passed by Martha, she stopped. The 2 older women looked at each other. There were no words. Only the intersection of 2 lives intertwined by frustration and secrecy for 30 years. Barbara opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She turned around and walked out of the room, followed by her defeated son. Martha walked over to me. Her eyes were wet, but her head was held high. It is done, child. It has been said. I hugged her, feeling the fragile bones under her dress. I had not won yet, but her wall of stories, carefully built over decades, had just suffered its first major crack. And it was only a matter of time before it crumbled. The air in the courtroom felt different this time, denser, charged with an anticipated verdict. The 15 days of waiting had passed in an oppressive suspense, but also in a strange calm. There were no more stones thrown at the window or threats, just the electrifying silence of someone waiting for the final decision. David walked in with a new thick folder. "The authorities did their job," he whispered to me, and his smile was wide, genuine. "They found the record of the police report in the old archives. Blurry but legible. And the emergency room doctor who treated Frank Thompson is still alive, retired. He did not remember the case, but his signature is on the medical report attached to the complaint. Fractured ribs. It matches." On the other side, Jason and Barbara looked like shadows of themselves. He had aged 10 years, with a nervous tick at the corner of his mouth. She, the impassive Barbara, clutched her purse with hands that could not hide a constant tremor. Her wall was crumbling brick by brick, and the dust was affecting her. Judge William Carter entered, and his gaze this time was not neutral. It swept the room and settled on Jason's lawyer, Kevin Lawson, with a coldness that dropped the temperature several degrees. The hearing resumes. Regarding the documentary evidence provided in the previous session, the authorities have verified its authenticity. There is a record of an incident complaint filed by Frank Thompson against Barbara Thompson, and a corresponding medical report. It is accepted as valid. There was no bang of the gavel, just the dry sentence in the air. I saw Barbara shrink as if the words were heavy. Lawson tried to stand up. "Your Honor, even so." "Silence, counsel," the judge cut in. "I have reviewed all the evidence in light of this new element. The credibility of the defendants has been seriously damaged. Their attempt to discredit the plaintiff through an expert report of dubious origin, in light of their own history of difficult conduct and concealment, is concerning to say the least." David did not need to say much of anything. The judge laid out his decision with the precision of a surgeon. Jason's inappropriate relationship was deemed proven. The recording, now backed by the lack of credibility of his denial, was key. The facts of the situation on the balcony in Oceanside were accepted as true, considered a situation of threat and pressure on Jason's part. And most importantly, the misuse of marital assets was considered proven. Consequently, the judge declared, the dissolution of the marriage is decreed considering the defendant's conduct, Jason Thompson. The division of the marital property will proceed as follows. The residence in Pine Hollow, in the name of Mrs. Barbara Thompson, will be considered marital property in the proportion paid for with joint funds. Given the practical impossibility of division, and taking into account the conduct, Mrs. Barbara Thompson is ordered to return it in full to the marital estate for its sale and distribution of 50% of the value to the plaintiff. The company Pacific Coast Investments LLC, and the real estate in its name in Oceanside will be liquidated, with 50% of the net corresponding to the plaintiff. Espousal support is imposed on Jason Thompson in favor of Mrs. Hannah Thompson, and the current restraining order is ratified. It was more than I had hoped for, more than David had expected. He was not just giving me money. He was giving me the house. The difficult little 650 square foot house that had been the trigger for everything. Barbara let out a sound, a moan of deep distress, and collapsed to one side. Jason caught her, but his gaze was not on his mother. It was on me. It was an absolute emptiness, that of a man who has lost everything. His money, his reputation, his mother, his facade. And he blamed me. The following months were an administrative process. Jason appealed but gave up at the first hurdle when David threatened to release the improper psychiatric report and Barbara's history of difficult behavior to the public record. The house in Pine Hollow was put in my name. The condo in Oceanside was sold quickly. Barbara, defeated and affected, went to live with a sister in another state. Jason disappeared from my radar. The restraining order was working, or he had found a way to stay away. I did not want the little house. I hated it. But one day back in San Diego talking to Stephanie and some women from the support group I had joined, it occurred to me. What if it was not my house? I said. What if it belonged to all of us? 3 months after the trial, on a crisp spring afternoon, I opened the door of the little house in Pine Hollow. It did not smell like Barbara. It smelled of fresh paint and cleanliness. The previously dark walls were now white. There were mattresses on the floor of the 2 bedrooms, clean blankets, a bookshelf with donated books. It was austere, almost simple, but it was safe. That day I was hosting the first informal meeting of what I wanted to be a temporary shelter for women from the region. A place to breathe, a first step. There were about 10 of us, some from the town, others from San Diego. Stephanie was there, of course. Even Martha came bringing a cake. We were talking, sharing coffee. A space of peace forcefully conquered in the heart of a difficult territory. I was pouring more coffee when I heard the noise. It was not at the door. It was at the side window, the one facing the alley. A sharp, violent thud like a shoulder against old wood. Then breaking glass. A clumsy hand reached in, searching for the latch from the inside. Panic, instantaneous and sharp, paralyzed me for a second. Then everything moved strangely slow. I looked at the women. Some had stood up, their eyes wide. Stephanie already had her phone in her hand. The authorities, I whispered with a calm I did not feel. They are already outside. I had called the sheriff's department in the region that very morning. It is just a precaution, I had told them. But I am starting a project here today, and my ex-husband has a restraining order. Just in case he gets any ideas. The deputy, a serious man who knew the case history well, raised no objections. We will put a car nearby. Without drawing attention, the door, poorly secured with the interior deadbolt that I had not changed yet, burst open with a crack of splintered wood. Jason stood in the doorway. He did not look in control. He looked overwhelmed. His eyes unfocused, his hair matted, and in his right hand, the long, sinister gleam of a kitchen knife. He did not look at me first. His gaze swept the room, the terrified faces of the women, the mattresses on the floor, the posters we had put up. What? What is this? He sputtered. His voice hoarse, unrecognizable. A situation. This is what you do with my house. It is no longer your house, Jason, I said, slowly stepping between him and the others. My heart was hammering, but my voice did not tremble. And it is not a situation. It is a shelter for women who do not want to be afraid of men like you. His gaze then locked onto mine, and in it I saw pure, unmitigated frustration, the frustration of someone who has lost all rationality. It is mine. It was all mine and you. You ruined everything. He raised the knife. There was not a scream, just a collective gasp. Stephanie moved to protect Martha, but Jason did not get to take a step. 2 dark shapes burst in from the alleyway through the broken door. They tackled him with speed and efficiency. One pinned the arm with the knife using a lock. The other forced him face down onto the tile floor. The knife clattered harmlessly as it fell. Jason's screams, muffled against the floor, were of infinite frustration. No. Let me go. It is mine. It is my house. One of the sheriff's deputies, the sergeant, knelt beside me while his partner handcuffed Jason. Are you all right, ma'am? I nodded, unable to speak, watching as they dragged a struggling Jason away. He was not looking at me. He was looking at the house with an expression of absolute bewilderment, as if he could not understand how that place, that symbol of his control, had turned into the exact opposite. The next day, while giving my statement at the station, I learned that Jason would be charged with attempted breaking and entering, violation of a restraining order, making threats with a weapon, and possible serious harm. He would not get out so easily this time. Back at the little house, with a locksmith changing the door for a new, solid one, I sat on the threshold. The afternoon sun warmed the white facade. Inside, some volunteers were cleaning up the mess. It would be ready again soon. Stephanie sat next to me. So what now? I looked at the small facade, the pot of geraniums Martha had brought. It was no longer Barbara's little house. It was not even my little house. It was something else. Now, I said, we give it a name, and we help others find the key to get out. The fear still echoed in my bones, a distant echo, but it was just an echo. The house was now mine, and I had decided to fill it with a new silence. Not the silence of fear or submission, but the deep, solid silence of peace finally conquered. The war was over, and against all odds I had not just survived. I had won a territory and I was determined to share it. Did you enjoy this story? Leave a comment and hit the subscribe button to support the channel. More tales are on the way.